if you're going to be a successful leader, you have to lead from your heart, not from your head. Yeah. That's like the most important thing. You need to live your truth. Mm-hmm. It's you that's selling your vision of how the organization is going to work. And if you're not capable of making that step, the gravity of the forest will always suck you in.
Yeah. So there we go. Maybe we should start with that, Tom. When you think about it, there's differences between leaders and managers. What does help a leader step out from being just a manager?
A manager often doesn't see the forest. They see the trees. And that kind of doesn't give them the benefit of overview and strategic thinking. A leader, on the other hand, rarely spends time in the forest. He's the guy that says, I'm here, and the forest is there, but that forest is my survival mechanism, but my future is looking at the forest. That's the difference.
Yeah, I see that in a lot of people who would like to be like that, and their problem is they get sucked back into the forest. Maybe through habit. They know they're trying not to be in the forest, but they are. And so they might agree with your theory there, but they struggle with the reality. And it's making that shift out of the forest that I think a lot of people struggle with.
Well, and I think it's because they're never really comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's like so important to realize that if you're a leader, it's a lonely world. And you're standing out there like bare ass naked saying, here's me, and this is my idea.
Yeah.
And if you're not capable of making that step, the gravity of the forest will always suck you in.
Yeah. Yeah, in its own way, it's a form of comfort zone, really.
Yeah,
forest,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, a comfortable place to hide if necessary. And
exactly.
Maybe even subconsciously hide, but certainly a place where you can be hidden.
Yeah.
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 Well, yeah, that rings very true. Looking at some of the challenges of leadership, you've spent a lot of time in difficult situations where you've had to take people through transformation or major change. Sometimes it's rescuing a business, sometimes it's just in a very awkward situation where people are struggling to get through and it's your job to take them through it. You've done lots of that. I've been involved in some of that watching you over the years, and that's an area of great strength for you. What's key to helping an organisation and a group of people through transformation? What's key to that?
What's key?
Yeah.
Probably the most important aspect is you need to live your truth. Mm-hmm. It's you that's selling your vision of how the organization is going to work. And if we go back to what we said about being comfortable being uncomfortable, if you lose your way and you're not living your truth or you're not existing in your value structure, you can't sell the vision of success.
Yeah.
And that is like, it sounds so pithy, it sounds so, kind of corny, but the fact of the matter is, if you're going to be a successful leader, you have to lead from your heart, not from your head. Yeah. That's like the most important thing. And that's what makes successful.
Thank you. I mean, it's one of these questions you can ask, give us your top 4 or 5, but actually it's what do you depend on most? And that's the answer I was hearing from you there. And I think there's a step beyond it that we were discussing this morning when we were on a walk, which is when your vision goes from being just yours to being ours being the team looking to you for leadership. And you get situations where you trust people to step into it and you see a difference You've experienced a fair bit of that yourself, because there comes a point where they can't just rely on you.
Yep.
Give us a couple of observations of where that has been the case in your experience, where people have had to step into a vision that becomes theirs and not just yours.
Man, there's many, but I think if we back up a step, I think not only do you, or do I, or whoever is the chosen leader at that point, required to be able to sell their value structure, you need to have something simple in your way forward that people can latch onto. Mm-hmm. When we were in GPS and we were developing the logo of the new logo of the company, because I was completely fed up with the logo that I inherited. And we started with a success statement. You know, what is successful in an oil and gas processing company? What is it that makes an oil and gas processing fabrication of oil and gas modules successful?
Yeah.
And we realized that to deliver on time every time is our key to success. So in 3 words, how do you define that? And we define it as delivery-driven success. And from that, we went into a new logo, and what was really interesting was we decided that we would have a logo competition in the organization. And we had every level of the company was entering their logo submission into the contest. And one of the really successful logos that we had was a welder in the shop, a little Bangladeshi guy, who I know had spent days working on this logo that he could submit. Mm-hmm. And that's when you realize that, you know what? They're buying what I'm selling. Mm. It's like, it comes like that, from that level. And you can never lose sight of how important it is that all those people are making you successful. Yeah. Never mind the company. It's you're successful if they're successful and they buy into what you're selling.
Yeah, and I agree with that as someone who works a lot in change, and to use your word, it's delivery, because that then becomes a two-way street. You are selling a vision as the leader. Yes, you want to engage people with the vision. You want them to get it and be it and adopt it. But you need something back from them. And if you've got a little Bangladeshi guy working really hard in his spare time to give you something back, in this case in the form of a potential logo for the organisation, because he has bought into this idea, you're getting something back then. That's a two-way street. That's vision made real, because it's no longer you would like them to have this vision, or you're telling them to have this vision. They're saying, hey, this is ours. And by the way, Tom, there's something that we could do with this that maybe you've not thought of.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I saw that happening at GPS. It was great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Using the word delivery, and there's much in the world of leadership that revolves around it. I think there's a lot more to leadership than delivery, but we are judged by it. And to get there, I think one of the biggest factors in my view is you need energy to deliver. Energy comes from an individual. It is a collective thing. It can be generated by yourself. It can be generated by events and people around you. Alongside that, there are other qualities, but without the energy, it's difficult, because energy is infectious. How as the leader, especially in difficult times, do you generate energy? Firstly in yourself, and then spread that so that this infectious energy element works for the good rather than against you.
Oh, well, that's a really interesting thing. I think if you are a leader, you need to be able to self-analyze. You need to be able to self-motivate. You need to be able to start with a blank sheet of paper and say, this is where we're going. And then take that idea and don't lose sight of it. Be persevere to the nth degree with that. And I mean, you hear like so many silly management leadership things that you think are so corny, and you realize that, you know, the day you have the Bangladeshi guy making a logo is, in terms of the organization development, is a very small success. But that is totally energizing a success. It's a small success. But boy, when you go to work the next day, you go, you know what? This is going to work. And you go, you know, I'm not so alone. I'm not really standing that bare ass naked. It's tough, and we are going in the right direction. But so you need to not get dragged down into, you know, this didn't work or that didn't work, or, you know, the owner of the company's telling me that I'm an idiot. Well, you know, that happens. That's life. You either accept that you are doing what you're doing and what you're doing is right, and then you have the little welder that says you're right, or you have your regional HR director that says, wow, you know, I actually understand what you're doing. Maybe we can do this. And you say, okay, there's another success. And so your energy becomes from within, but it's built by what you're doing around you. And that's leadership. That is you being able to adapt to how your organization's going to go. That's, I think, is how you keep the energy.
Yeah, and I think keep the energy is part of the equation, because generating it in the first place is part of the battle, but then sustaining it. You spoke a fair bit there about what is essentially resilience, being resilient in the face of setbacks, or you know, I like to use the word having grit in the face of trouble, but and there's quite a lot of it.
There's enough to keep you going.
One of the aspects of energy that I like as I get a bit older in my career, in my mid-50s now, I look back at times when I was younger, and the phrase "the energy of youth" comes to mind.
I think of the vagaries of youth as opposed to
that's part of the thing that makes life interesting, isn't it? The vagaries of youth, and how you manage the vagaries of youth. Never mind your own vagaries, is part of the fun of it. But what I guess I'm getting at here is we need to invest in the young folk, don't we? And it's never, you know, it's having the courage to invest in someone that maybe doesn't have the experience, but they've got something, and you see it. And you've had a few of those. I know we can't personalise names in a little podcast like this, but give us a bit of a flavour of some of the young people that you've given a chance to, and you know, you've lit the blue touch paper with them, haven't you?
Yeah, well, this is very, very personal for me, because I consider myself very lucky to have been in a CEO's position and have led organizations and successfully led organizations. And one of the things that I realized early on is that there are people who are equally bright or clever or whatever as I was, but they've never had an opportunity. They've never been given an opportunity. They were born in a country that has no education system or whatever. And we had one little guy who was my T-boy in Dubai. And I would get the office early in the morning. And this guy would be there before I was there. And one day I said to him, I said, so Mohammed, why are you here all the time? I said, you don't need to be. He says, I was told that you come early and you need to have your coffee, and I'm your guy. I have to make it. I said, okay, fine. I said, so anyway, we got to know each other, make a short story long, as I say. We started laughing with each other and stuff like that. I started asking him about his girlfriend, and he said, and he would get all red and embarrassed. I don't have a girlfriend, and I can't have a girlfriend. And I said, okay, so we laughed. Anyway, I got a story. This kid left Pakistan when he was 15 years old, went to work for Alpha Tam Motor Group, lied about his age so he could get a passport to leave his family to come to a better opportunity. 5 years, he put license plates on cars that were sold out of Alpha Tam Engineering, got hired by our company. And the kid had a grade 7 or something education, no opportunity. And I said to our HR guy, I said, we're getting that guy to university. I said, I don't care what it takes. We're going to put this kid in university and give him a future. Because anybody that leaves home at 15 and sends money back to his family for 5 or 6 years, I said, that guy is a guy I want to spend money on. Yeah. We took a lot of effort to get him into university. He got his GED and we got that. I had to go and visit his parents to convince them that he wasn't going to lose his job, that he wasn't, because they were concerned that he had, a great job and he was sending money to them and his family was doing well. And I said, but the family's going to do better. I said, this will be way better. It took visits to their family to get this sold. Yeah. So we sold it. The kid got his GED. The kid got into university. Through much, he was bullied all the way through this organization. We had to make an office. We had to make an office into his classroom because he couldn't study in his room because the guys were bullying him. And I stuck with it because this guy was worth it. Guess what? He graduated. He's got a good job. He's still working in the company and still stays in touch with me. Great. It's like, that's what I believe in, paying it forward. I gotta give these kids opportunity. Yeah. I mean, you take guys that like Dario and Paul Blake and all these guys. These guys are general managers of companies now. Yeah. Yeah. I know the guys you mean, and they've done extremely well. Exactly. But someone needs to open the door for people. Exactly. Some of them will open the door themselves, but the job of a leader is partly to open the door, lead a horse to water, whatever. Give people the opportunity. Yeah. And you need as a leader, you need to know that there is a plan in case you get hit by a bus. Yeah. Right? A leader can get hit by a bus, have a stroke, have a heart attack. Next thing you know, you can't do a job or whatever. You need these guys. And you need to know that, the guy may only be 21 years old or he may be 34 years old or whatever. Yeah. That's the guy. Yeah. Yeah. Give him the opportunity. Well, that's part of the question I was going to come to in a moment. We'll bring it forward just now because surely part of the leader's job is the succession and the management of it, not just into their job, but the stream of succession throughout the business and the organisation. Often it's done poorly, but I wonder how you set things up to enable people to grow into the place where it can last beyond your tenure and still succeed. Because I know you have done, because some years after you've left the places that we've worked in together, they're doing fine. But how do you as the leader shape that? Yeah. Well, you're not going to get this out of a management book. No. That's one of the reasons we have a discussion. You have to, I think the really important thing is you need to be brutal in your assessment. It's, we had this program that I set up called KWG, and KWG was the keep, the work with, and the get rid of. Mm-hmm. Those were then, and we regularly went through the people that we had in the organization of, if they were performing to what we expected, then that was great. If they had huge potential and we felt it was worth working with them, they would keep them, put them in jobs. People that were just there filling spaces, they were gone. And every year we went through that. And as you kind of work that process, you find people like, our CFO that we had. He was a guy that was, when he came on, he and I made a deal, and I said, look, you teach me how to stay out of trouble with the family, and I'll turn you into the best CFO that you'll ever dream of being. Yeah. And that was the deal we made. Yeah. And we lived with that. And the family loved me, and he is a superstar now. You know,
And this is a family-owned business,
Yes.
essentially, that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, you need to keep the family on side,
Yeah.
because they hold so much power as the owners.
Exactly. And they're a Middle Eastern family, and I'm a Western Canadian.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
there's some cultural differences,
Yeah.
and that worked magically. And so you as the leader have to be aware of the people around you and how they would fit in the event that you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just have like your immediate reports. It has to be the people, the next layer or the next layer that you're looking at. And I spent an awful lot of time talking to people, like all the time. I would wander around. If I was in a factory, I'd wander around one of our factories. I would get a sense of who the people were and where they could fit.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you do is you try it. You just say, okay, I think this guy's, we have this position. I think this guy can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you think? To the general manager,
Yeah.
whoever was
Yeah.
there. What do you think? Well, okay, we're doing it. Fine. That's it. So you make the decision. Works out 99% of the time. It works out.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think in the time that I was in those positions that I actually, I did make 2 bad hires in my time. And that was a troubling situation for me that I couldn't believe that I had made such an error in judgment, but I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens. But you cut your losses quickly and you move on. But it's one of those things that there is a cost, and there's a personal cost, and there's a cost to the company. But I think being able to reflect on what you did and how you did it, or what caused you to make that choice is important for the leader. Self-reflection, the ability to kind of sit in it yourself and understand. That's what differentiates the leader from the manager is, you know, why did that not work? Like how is it possible that I was wrong that bad?
And the preparedness to actually answer the question
Exactly.
honestly with yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Just a couple of closing points, really. We'll finish with something about your maybe closing advice to people going through the transition into leadership. You know, more of a catch-all thing. We'll close with that in a moment. But just reflecting back on something we discussed earlier on today, is the long-lasting impact you can have as a leader on people. And you're in a position now in your career where you've got enough of it behind you that these events can have a long-term effect that you're now aware of. And we were speaking about a young HR manager in Singapore earlier today, who we both know well, and she is an absolute superstar, and we knew that. You knew it especially. You knew her well. I got to know her and saw exactly what you saw as well. This must be about 8 years ago we're talking about now. Young woman at the time, still a young woman, doing well in life. And there was something related to the story with the young man who you opened the door to education for. And it was about permission to be the best you can be. Yeah. And I saw that with this young woman in Singapore who had plenty about her, but possibly a little bit of self-doubt and needing a bit of a push and a bit of a door opening. And I saw you do that. And it's something that certainly anyone listening to this, I would encourage to look around your organisation and see the people with something about them that is called real potential, and do what you can to light that up for them. Because we saw that with her. And there was a wonderful story you told me about it earlier today that I don't know how far you want to expand on it, but I'll let you fill in the blanks here there on that story, because I guess she might listen to this. She knows who she is. We won't share that on this, but we can maybe share some of the circumstances.
Well, there's 2 parts to this. One is the first day I took over the company, and we had a significant problem. We had square pegs in round holes everywhere in the organization. I mean, it was it was a nightmare. And so I had this kind of process where I interviewed every manager in the entire company, which was at that time 200 and some managers. And I personally interviewed every one of them, and I personally gave them a test. And this young HR person at the time was deputy HR manager for Singapore, not anything to do with the region. And she comes in, and I said, okay, I said, look, I said, you're the CEO of GPS. I said, I want you to tell me what you would do to fix this company. And she turned to my colleague who was with me, and she said, and she's really nervous, and she said, does he really mean that I have to think like the CEO, like I have to? And he went, well, I think that's what he said. So she sat there, she drew an organization chart based on what she saw in the company that wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I think I showed you the org chart that she did.
I remember it, yes. Yeah, she'd roughly drawn it.
She'd drawn the org chart of what she wanted to see from her forest. Yeah. And she got halfway through it, and I was looking at what she was doing, and I said, look, I said, no problem. I said, this is good. I said, we're happy with your answer. I said, but I've got more people to do. I'm out of it. She left all confused. She was like totally confused that she thought that she'd screwed everything up. And she went to my colleague after I'd finished the day, and she went back to him. She said, Mr. Bauer, kind of just shut everything down. She said, I've been sitting here all afternoon, like really worried. And my colleague looked at her and said, you should have seen the other people. He said, don't worry. So we fast forward a couple of years, we had to close many divisions down. We had to do a number of things. She was on her own as the regional HR director, HR manager. And we had to lay off, I forget, many, like hundreds and hundreds. I think it was like 2,300 people we had to close out of the APAC region. And out of 2,300 people that we released, we had one court case. I said, and it was that girl, that woman, that did it. I said, so I guessed right on that one.
Yeah.
She's brilliant. And she now has a great job. She stays in touch with me and asks me for references when she needs it. And of course I'd hire her.
Of course you would. Yeah. Thank you very much. So we come to the closing question. Bearing in mind the audience for this podcast is largely people that are going through the transition into leadership, and they plot the course ahead for themselves through the work that we're doing with them. You spoke earlier on of it being very important for them to get out of the forest. Any further observations and reflections that you could leave these good folks with as you look back on the time that you spent, a long time leading difficult things and lots of people in challenging situations?
I think probably when I look back to when I knew I really wasn't a manager and that I was more of a leader than I was a manager, is you need to understand how important it is for you to see outside of what your responsibility area is. You need to understand how it fits, how your job, whether it be you're an engineer or you're a manager of widgets, how does that widget fit in the organization? And more importantly is you can't ever become bitter in what you're doing. If you become bitter in what you're doing, you will never get promoted. You will become just a sourpuss that you're just not worth being you're not worth being considered. I don't mean that you have to be happy all the time. I don't mean you have to be, all things to all people. What you need to be, as I said earlier, is true to yourself. You need to be inquisitive. You need to understand where you fit, what you want to see. You may not be able to change it in that job, but you'll be able to take that away and move it to your next job. And I said, you remember when we went through the whole transition of the estimating group, and I introduced my 68 lessons learned as a leader of an organization. It was based on every mistake I made in every job that I did. 68 things that I screwed up in my career that became the basis of our risk evaluation and our estimates. That's because every job I had, I made a mistake in. Or 2 or 3 or 4. Don't be afraid of that. But don't make the same one twice. And don't think the world's out to get you. If you look at yourself all the time, remember, you're going to go to bed every night and look in the mirror, brushing your teeth or whatever you do, and you'll reflect on your day. And there's going to be people that you meet every day. Some of them are going to like you. Some of them aren't going to like you, but most of them aren't going to care. So don't worry about it. The next day, it's going to be the same thing. It's you standing in front of you. You'll win.
Thank you very much, Tom. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
You're
Good
welcome.
to see you.
Thank you.